Cut it, Oppenheimer said. Sir, we should trace it, find out who— I said cut it, Elias, Oppenheimer snapped, his usual poetic demeanor cracking to reveal the immense pressure beneath. General Groves wants a test at 0530. The weather is clearing. We have the president in Potsdam waiting for this card to play against Stalin. If I delay this test for a spy hunt, the war continues. Boys die in the Pacific. Cut the wire. Elias pulled a pair of wire cutters from his belt. He snipped the black wire. The loose end fell into the mud, looking like a dead snake. Now, Oppenheimer said, straightening up, his composure returning like a mask, you saw nothing. You found a faulty connection and fixed it. Do you understand? But whoever did this is still here. They're inside the wire. Everyone is inside the wire, Elias. Fuchs, Greenglass, maybe even you. We are building a god here. Did you think the devils wouldn't come to watch? Oppenheimer turned his back to the tower. Go to the South 10,000 bunker. Take your station. If we survive the next 4 hours, we can worry about treason. Right now, worry about the atmosphere igniting. Elias watched Oppenheimer walk back toward the command car. The rain was letting up, just as the meteorologist Hubbard had predicted. The clouds were breaking. The stars were coming out, indifferent to the humans below preparing to light a second sun. Elias closed the junction box. He knew he should follow orders. He was a scientist, not a G-man. But the mathematics in him couldn't let go of the variable. He knelt down and dug his fingers into the mud, finding the cut end of the parasite wire. He gave it a tug. It was loose. He pulled more. It came up easily from the wet sand. It hadn't been buried deep. He coiled about 10 feet of it before it snagged. He pulled harder. The sand shifted, and a small metal object popped out of the ground. It wasn't a transmitter. It was a dictaphone recording device, modified with a timer and a trigger relay. Elias wiped the mud off the casing. Etched into the bottom, scratched hastily as if by a knife, were initials. E.V. Elias froze. The air left his lungs. Eleanor Vance. The brilliant young chemist from the University of California, Berkeley. The woman who had helped him calibrate the lenses last week. The woman who had shared a cigarette with him outside the commissary, talking about how much she missed the ocean. The woman he was falling in love with. A siren wailed in the distance, a mournful mechanical cry echoing off the Oscura mountains. It was the warning. 2 hours to detonation. Elias shoved the recorder into his heavy coat pocket. He stood up, the weight of the device pressing against his hip like a tumor. He looked up at the tower one last time. The Gadget waited, silent and cold. He had to get to the South 10,000 bunker. He had to sit next to Elena, who was manning the optical cameras, and watch the end of the world with her, knowing that she had tried to steal it. He climbed into his jeep, his hands shaking so badly he could barely turn the key. As the engine roared to life, Elias realized that the atomic bomb wasn't the only thing about to explode. The Trinity Test was just the beginning. The real war had already started in the shadows. End of Chapter 1. The mud was the first enemy. Before the radiation, before the heat that would rival the center of the sun, there was just the relentless, sucking mud of the high desert. Dr. Elias Thorne wiped the grime from his round, wire-rimmed spectacles and stared up at the wooden tower. It stood 100 feet tall, a skeletal obelisk shrouded in the driving rain and lightning. Suspended at the top, in a corrugated steel shed, sat the Gadget. It was an innocuous name for the end of the world. Elias, get back in the jeep. You'll catch pneumonia before we even split the atom, a voice called out over the roar of the wind. Elias turned to see Captain Miller, his military handler, leaning out of the olive-drab Willys MB. Miller was a man of square jaws and square thoughts, the kind of soldier General Leslie Groves relied on to keep the long hairs, the scientists, in line. "Just checking the cabling on the beta lines, Miller," Elias shouted back, shielding his eyes. "With this lightning, a premature surge could trigger the detonators. If that happens, we won't need pneumonia to kill us." Miller grimaced and rolled up the window. Elias turned back to the tower. He wasn't just checking the beta lines. He was looking for a ghost. 3 hours ago, while monitoring the seismographic equipment in the South 10,000 bunker, Elias had picked up a signal. It wasn't a ground tremor. It was a coded burst transmission, riding the frequency reserved for the weather balloons. It was short, sophisticated, and it had originated from inside the perimeter. Someone was telling the world, specifically, Elias suspected, a handler in Santa Fe who would relay it to Moscow, that the test was a go. Elias trudged through the muck toward the base of the tower. His badge, marked K-31, swung heavily against his chest. He was a physicist, specializing in implosion hydrodynamics. He knew the math of the bomb better than he knew his own wife back in Chicago. He knew that the sphere of plutonium-239 at the top of that tower was subcritical, surrounded by high explosives arranged in a perfect geometric lens. If it worked, it would compress the core to critical mass in a fraction of a microsecond. If it failed, it would be the most expensive firecracker in human history. But Elias wasn't thinking about the physics. He was thinking about the encryption key he'd found partially burned in the trash bin of the tech area barracks 2 days ago. It used a variation of a Vigenère cipher, but with Cyrillic roots. He reached the junction box at the tower's base. He unlocked it with trembling fingers. Inside, amidst the nest of wires that would carry the firing signal, he saw it. A small black parasite wire spliced neatly into the main firing circuit, leading down into the conduit and burying itself in the sand, heading not toward the control bunker, but due west. "Damn it," Elias whispered. It wasn't just a transmission. It was a sabotage link or a telemetry steal. If it was sabotage, the Gadget wouldn't detonate. If it was telemetry, the Soviets would have the exact firing sequence data before the mushroom cloud even cleared. "Hey, you there!" Elias jumped, dropping his flashlight into the mud. He spun around. Standing 10 feet away, illuminated by a flash of lightning, was a figure in a heavy trench coat and a fedora pulled low. The silhouette was unmistakable. It wasn't a guard. It was Dr. Robert Oppenheimer. The director of the project looked like a specter. He was gaunt, his chain smoking habit having whittled him down to bone and nerves. He walked toward Elias, ignoring the rain. "Dr. Thorne," Oppenheimer said, his voice soft but cutting through the wind. "The firing circuit is Kistiakisky's domain. Why are you tampering with it 3 hours before zero?" Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. He respected Oppie. Everyone did. But in a place where secrecy was the currency, trust was bankrupt. "I found a tap, Robert," Elias said, stepping aside to reveal the open box. "Look." Oppenheimer didn't move. He stared at Elias, his pale blue eyes unreadable in the dark. A tap. Someone spliced into the firing line. It runs west. I think they're trying to record the implosion symmetry data remotely. Oppenheimer stepped closer, peering into the box. He touched the black wire with a long, nicotine-stained finger. He didn't look surprised. That was what terrified Elias.